Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Obesity Matters Wellness Workshop, where we embark on an epic journey towards better health and wellness together. Whether this is your first time or you have been with us since we started this program, we are grateful you are here. My name is Rachel, and I am the Vice Chair of Obesity Matters, and I'm your host for this year-long program. The topic is your festive season survival guide. Practical strategies for managing holiday stress and well-being. So before we begin, to make this session as relevant and as impactful as possible, what we have done, as we've done with past sessions, we would like to get your perspective on the topics we're about to discuss. So your answers will actually help shape the discussion and also give you a glimpse as to what others in the audience are thinking and feeling about this topic. At the end of the session, we'll revisit these questions and see if your perspective may have shifted. So the questions are, the first one, do you find the holiday season more exhausting than enjoyable? The second question, which aspect of the holidays causes you the most stress? Check all that apply. Some possible answers are managing health and diet, managing family and expectations, social commitments and gatherings, financial strain, and coping with loneliness. What areas do you hope to prioritize during the holidays? So this is the third question. Maintaining healthy habits, coping with pressure to meet expectations, finding time for self-care, and feeling connected to others. So we'll give you a few seconds if you haven't yet responded to do so, and then we'll share the results with everyone. So for the first question, do you find the holiday season more exhausting than enjoyable? And 56% of people said yes. 29% said no, and there's 15 that are unsure about, what that really means in terms of the balance there. The second question, which aspect of the holidays causes you the most stress? And number one is managing health and diet at 68%. The second one is managing family and expectations at 50%. And the third question, what areas do you hope to prioritize during the holidays? Actually, maintaining healthy habits is 78%. Very high, and I think that means that we've got the right topic for today. The second one is finding time for self-care at 50%. So thank you so much for your insights on that and your input into the conversation we're about to have. So to help us explore these practical strategies for managing holiday stress and our well-being, we are super excited to welcome Dr. Dayna Lee Baggley. Welcome to today's session, Dayna. So before we get started, are you able to share a little bit with us about your background and why you are uniquely positioned to help us all build up our festive season survival guide?
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm a registered psychologist. I live in Halifax. I'm actually registered in Nova Scotia, BC, Alberta, and Ontario. Spent a lot of my career working on medical, surgical, and cancer care units at the hospital. So working with people with chronic disease and life-threatening disease. I was there for wave 1 and wave 2 of the pandemic and left after wave 2 for my own burnout reasons. And also the mental health needs of the planet had kind of exploded. And I was doing one-on-one therapy with cancer patients, which is obviously a meaningful thing to do. But I was like, one-on-one therapy is not going to cut it. Like the need is just too big. And so I left my job at the hospital and I now run a consulting company that helps with mental health in the workplace. So we do things like train leaders and help workplaces come up with mental health strategies for the workplace as well, just to try to help people have environments that are healthy. We always want to empower the individual, but we also want to create environments that are conducive to healthy habits and helpful for people's wellness. And so we try to target all of that. And I am uniquely suited to not uniquely, but I will be helpful because I wrote a book called Healthy Habits Suck, How to Get Off the Couch and Live a Healthy Life, even if you don't want to. And it's all about science-based tips to start and stick to healthy habits. And so healthy habits suck, especially during the holidays. And so that's definitely something that we can talk about and some science-based strategies for how to cope with that.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like we have the right topic and we have the right expert. So let's dive in. We'll look at each of these questions. It's sort of like an issue that may come up. And certainly based on some of the answers we just saw, this would be very typical and helpful for all of us. So we'll get started with the first typical issue that comes up. And actually, this was one of the responses in the questions as a high area of concern, is feeling exhausted in the holidays, during the holidays. There is so much going on and there's so much that is asked from us. There's so many expectations. So many of us do feel that the holidays are exhausting and sometimes we just want January to get here. What are your practical strategies and tips and approaches for how we get through it?
So I've been talking about battery management for a while now. And so we think about that in terms of like your survival brain, which is like the emotional automatic part of your brain, versus your frontal lobe, which is more like a battery. And so we can wear out that battery of kind of self-control. It controls our behavior. And so we've all been kind of struggling with battery management since the pandemic, and because of our new normal after the pandemic, there's a lot of new things we have to worry about. And so that takes up some of our battery. And so the holidays are a time when especially we have to do some battery management because there's so many more demands on our batteries, right? There's so many more things you have to do. So that includes things like decorating, going to holiday parties, buying presents for people. And there's these huge expectations that it's supposed to be this magical time of the year, right? The happiest time of the year. And so there's a lot of stress about trying to live up to those expectations. And so we want to keep in mind that those extra demands on our batteries are going to mean that we need to be even more mindful of managing your battery. And our culture does this really terrible thing and suggests that if you just try harder, you can just create more energy. And so you can just do as much as you want if you just try hard enough. But you want to think about the battery as like a fixed amount, right? And so if you choose to spend it on this, then it means you can't spend it on that. When we're deciding what to do during the holidays, we really should prioritize the things that matter most to us rather than just doing all the things that we should do. So there's all these things that we're sort of told that we should be doing, and we often do them just because we've done them before, or because we see social media doing it, or other things like that. And instead, we could actually just think about like what matters most to me during the holidays and spend your battery on those things. Who are the people you really want to see and talk to? What are the traditions or activities you want to do? So as an example, my family decided we're not going to cook Christmas dinner anymore. So because for us, nobody actually enjoys the cooking part. Now, some people really enjoy the cooking part. It is actually part of what makes the holidays special for them, is like preparing food for loved ones. But in my family, no one was that excited about, actually, it felt like, a really big drain on our battery. And so we've decided that we're not cooking Christmas dinner. We will either find takeout somewhere, or we will, find somebody who makes Christmas dinner and have it delivered. Other years we've gone to like buffets for Christmas dinner as well. And so that's one of the ways we manage our batteries over the holidays, is choosing like what's really important to us. And for us, it was being together and eating some yummy food, but the cooking and the preparing it wasn't actually that meaningful to us.
That's very interesting. And I think probably for some of us, quite a shock that you're not having Christmas dinner at home, cooking it yourself. But I think perhaps even layered into that, then it's like, how do you approach that conversation? There obviously communication and open communication is a big part of the strategy for helping you decide, how can you prioritize some of these, what we consider traditionally parts of the holidays or really important parts of the holidays. It's being able to have those kind of conversations.
Yeah, so we often talk about the importance of being value driven, and values are about like what matters to you, but they're very specifically about who you want to be. So they're about what you want to give to life, not what you want to get from life, right? And so it's about how you show up as a person, what matters to you about how you're contributing to the world, how you care about people, how you connect with people. And so it can be useful to, in all these different traditions, to think about like, what's the part that really matters to me? For the dinner, we decided that like the part that really mattered was like being together as a family and eating yummy food, but the prep part actually wasn't a meaningful part of it for us. That wasn't like, I wasn't interested, and that's how I wanted to contribute to the world. You want to think through for yourself, what are the traditions that actually mean something to you versus things that you've just always done or things that are always done. One year we didn't have a Christmas tree also. That that was actually because I had like a 1.5-year-old at the time, and he was totally going to pull that Christmas tree on his head. But no matter what, I was like, I don't know how to put a baby gate around a whole Christmas tree. And so we just didn't have a Christmas tree, right? But so again, there's these things that we think we have to do, and it's a lot more meaningful. You'll have a much more meaningful holiday if you think about what matters to you. Once you know which part of that is important to you, the value part of that tradition or activity, then you can have that conversation with family. And it's a good, important, useful conversation for families, right? To say, look, we have limited battery, everybody does. And so what matters most to us? Which traditions do we really want to do? You know, for younger children, you give them limited choices. So you give them choices where it's like, do you want the blue pajamas or the green pajamas? But you get pajamas either way kind of thing, right? So you think about what can I really handle, and you offer them choices within what you can really handle. For older children, if something really matters to them, then they can contribute to it. Right. So, you know, if my son was like, oh, we're not making Christmas dinner at home, I'd be like, great, you want to cook it? Like, you know, they can add their batteries to the system if it's something that really matters to them. I think it's a really important conversation to have with your family so that you can protect your health and wellness, right? That battery is also the same battery used to stick to your healthy habits and to physical activity or other like healthy habits that you're doing during the holidays. It all comes from the same place. It's all from the same battery. And so it can be sometimes, I actually don't find it an awkward conversation. I find people actually think it's a really meaningful conversation to actually pause and think about like what really matters here. Like, what do we really enjoy about the holidays, and what's stuff that we can give up because it's just stuff we've always done, but doesn't actually like mean that much to us. And I think it also gets everybody like away from like the commercialization of the holidays and into like what really matters. You know what I mean? I think it's a great conversation to have with your family.
I love adding in the values piece. And then, you know, clearly the key important thing there was that the family was spending time together. So that's really cool. Yeah.
And think about spending time with family. Again, the part that you have the most control over is your own behavior, right? So because of the way human brains work, we have the most amount of control, not unlimited, but most amount of control over our behavior, the things we do, the things we say. We have less control over our thoughts and feelings, which is coming from our survival brain. It's an automatic, unconscious part of our brain that we don't have direct control over. We can influence it, but we can't control it. Then we have even less control over other people's behavior, and then even less control over other people's thoughts and feelings. And yet we set up so much of the holidays that are about what other people feel and what other people do, right? I want my kid to be happy at Christmas, or I want them to enjoy the food. I want them to be pleasant and not fight with each other, right? I want them to come to my house for Christmas dinner, or my sister will take the other day for, you know, Boxing Day dinner or whatever it is. And so we end up in these very helpless positions because we're focused on these things we don't actually have control over, right? So if you focus on the part you have control over, which is your own behavior, then like how they take it isn't up to you. And so, you know, people sometimes have this like expectation that their family members will suddenly become different people at the holidays, but they're the same people they are year round, right? And so if you constantly have fights with your mom about why you're not married and where her grandkids are, it's going to happen at Christmas too, right? Probably even more so because no one has any frontal lobes at the holidays. Everybody's on low battery. And so there's a difference between spending time with family and having an enjoyable time with family, right? The behavior is spending time with family. That's the part you have control over. Whether it's good time, enjoyable time, whether they do the things you want them to do, whether they feel the way you want them to feel, that's totally out of your control. And so the value-driven behavior is spending time with family. It's not having a good time with family. You can't guarantee that.
Hello, Sandra. Do you have a question or something you'd like to add?
I do. I had to pop on and say hi to Dayna.
Hi.
You and I actually love this topic. I've been talking about it all day long in all of my groups as we all get ready for the holidays. That's why I'm wearing holiday red, because it's the topic of the day. And I wanted to talk about going into the holiday season when we have loved ones who've passed away. So, in my example, my mom passed away. So our traditional Italian Christmas Eve will never be, because she would make this elaborate fish dinner that's very traditional to Southern Italy. And we've tried. Nobody knows how to make it. So we've let go of that. And then my dad passed away. And as we're now, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, even though it's not terribly Christmas, but maybe other people are going through something similar, that as you are settling an estate and there's no more parents, that something very unusual happens to the siblings. And my take, and I'm not a psychologist, is that the four siblings, we're four siblings, and we all come to the table with our childhood traumas and our childhood roles, and we're just reenacting it all now that we have no parents, and now we're trying to get into the holiday season, managing that as well. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. So grief comes in waves, very much shows up with the first of things. So like the first Christmas without that person, the first Easter without that person, the first, and again, I actually think it's really helpful to understand from like a brain perspective why this happens. And so the human brain does not have a way of encoding in your survival brain that somebody is dead and they're never coming back. And this is a very functional thing for humans, because if we did have that automatic as part of our survival brain, then somebody would be leaving for work and we'd be like, they're gone forever. I'm never going to see them again, right? That's not functional. So we have to believe that even though we're not going to see someone, that they will come back. That's like the default of the survival brain. And so when that person is never coming back, the survival brain takes a long time it never actually codes the person is dead. It just codes don't expect to see them. Like, don't expect to see them at Christmas. Don't expect to see them at the dinner table. Don't expect to see them pulling up in the driveway. Which is why people have that experience of like, logically, I know they're gone, but I keep thinking I hear their voice, or you know, I keep setting a dinner plate for them and forgetting. It's because your survival brain hasn't had enough data yet to say, don't expect them for dinner, which is why the holidays end up being difficult, because you don't get a lot of opportunities to recode the data, right? So our survival brain only learns through repetition. You can't like force it to learn something. And so it just needs a lot of data not to expect that person in certain circumstances for you to not have that feeling of like, right? And so I think that's helpful to like understand then why at the holidays we you know, at the first of things, because there's no data for that. And really successful grieving is that you get to the point where you're both sad and happy, meaning that you still long for them. There is still a hole where they used to be. That never goes away, but that you also can remember the good times and smile. So it's not just kind of sadness that shows up, it's sadness and happiness. Like the joy that they brought to your life. And also remember that any sadness that shows up, it's really just an extension of love, right? It's there because you love the person, because you had a meaningful relationship, because it matters that they're not there. Again, the only way to not feel that is if they weren't important to you, right? If they didn't matter at all, then you wouldn't really care if they weren't there at the holidays, right? Because they don't matter to you at all. So again, recognizing that sadness is like a sign that you had an important relationship there. When we talk about siblings, and this happens when you're an adult child, basically, it's a similar thing that we've had so much data as children in the roles we were as children, that expectation is very hard to overcome. And so, yes, when you get back into your family of origin, you often take on the same roles you had as a child, meaning like your siblings and your parents are going to treat you like you're a 12-year-old forevermore. And they don't get enough data to, again, adjust the expectation, the model of you in their head, because they're not around you as much, right? They've spent tons of hours with you as a child. And so that gets like imprinted basically in our survival brain. We don't get enough data to update that information. So we're not treated like adults, we're treated like our child selves. And it's often similar with siblings because we don't spend as much time with them as we did as children. Can change those relationships, but it's a lot of work. And it has to be bi-directional. Both people have to be working really hard to overcome all of those models we have us as children. And so sometimes you just play the role, right? I mean, sometimes you just be the person everyone expects you to be. And then go find your own people, right? Go find the people who know you as an adult, who know you as like your current self, reconnect with like your authentic self. But sometimes the best way to cope with it is just to accept that it's going to happen. Because again, it's changeable, but it takes so much effort that it's usually not something that people do well.
Thank you for sharing your insights, everyone. You've really made this session so much richer, and hopefully you gained some new ideas for managing holiday stress and well-being. So what's coming up next? Actually, Sandra is going to be hosting a support session on December 8th.